A deadly wedding night detective, Malcolm Clark's phone rang while it was still dark out. Calls at that hour were never good, but this one felt worse than usual. A woman had been killed in the presidential suite of the Madison Grand Hotel on her wedding night. By the time Clark got there, the sky was turning gold with the rising sun. Police cars flashed their lights outside, casting strange reflections on the hotel's white marble columns. Inside, a pale, shaken receptionist pointed him to the elevator. 12th floor, sir." The hallway upstairs buzzed with activity. Uniformed officers, medics, and crime techs filled the corridor, moving like a well-rehearsed routine. But Clark noticed right away. The scene had already been disturbed. Too many people had walked through before him. At the suite's entrance, a young officer gave him a quick nod. "Sergeant Davis. I was first here. Female victim, early 20s. Looks like strangulation, but there are other injuries. Husband is the main suspect. They were celebrating their wedding night here." Clark pulled on gloves and stepped inside. The room was big, expensive, with a full wall of windows overlooking Lake Mendota. It should have been beautiful. But on the floor near the bed lay the bride, lifeless. Her wedding dress hung neatly in the corner, untouched. She was wearing a torn silk nightgown. Clark knelt beside her. "Name?" "Tyra Parker," Davis said. "Used to be Johnson. 21 years old. Bruises on her neck and face, blood around her mouth and nose." The medical examiner, Me Rodriguez, didn't even look up. "She died between midnight and 2 a.m. Multiple hits to the head and neck. She fought back. Lots of defensive wounds." Clark scanned the room. A broken lamp, a flipped nightstand, shattered champagne glasses, blood on the sheets. Someone had put up a fight. "Where's the husband?" "Next room. Under guard." The maid heard screams. Called security. When they got here, he was sitting on the floor next to her, covered in blood. Didn't resist. Clark kept walking through the suite. On the nightstand, he saw a smashed phone, probably Tyra's. A bottle of champagne sat nearby. 2 glasses, one broken. "Who found her?" he asked. "Maria Gomez. Hotel maid," Davis said, flipping through his notes. "She's in the lobby now. Security guard, too. Tony Jackson." Downstairs, Clark met Maria, a nervous woman in her 40s. She rubbed the edge of her apron and spoke carefully. "I heard screaming. At first I thought, honeymoon stuff. But then something crashed. Then a woman screamed. I knocked. No one answered, so I called security." "Did you hear what they said?" "Something about messages." The man shouted, "I saw the messages." Then the woman said, "You've got it all wrong." More yelling, then silence. Security guard Tony Jackson backed up her story. "When I got in, he was just sitting there staring at his hands, covered in blood. He kept saying, 'She cheated on me,' over and over, like he was in shock." Clark nodded and went to the next room. Jamal Parker sat on the edge of the bed. His wedding suit was wrinkled and stained with blood. His hands were cuffed. His face was blank. "Mr. Parker," Clark said calmly. "I'm Detective Clark. Can you tell me what happened?" Jamal looked up slowly, like it took effort. "She was cheating on me," he whispered. Clark sat across from him and turned on his recorder. "Tell me everything." Jamal's voice was low, almost broken. "We got married yesterday. It was perfect. The ceremony, the people, everything. We came to the hotel around 10, opened champagne, laughed. Then..." He trailed off, eyes going distant. The truth in pieces. Jamal suddenly stopped talking, his eyes frozen, staring at nothing. Clark leaned forward slightly. "What happened after that?" he asked gently. Jamal swallowed hard. "Tyra went to shower. I thought I'd surprise her. Order more champagne. I grabbed her phone to take a picture, to send to her friends." His voice trailed off. "And then," Clark prompted, "that's when I saw the messages." Jamal's voice cracked. "What messages?" "From Andre, my best friend. He was my best man." Jamal's voice shot up with sudden rage, then dropped again. "They were meeting behind my back, laughing about me, planning to run away together after the honeymoon." Clark let that sit for a moment. "What did you do after you saw them?" "I don't know." Jamal shook his head slowly, as if trying to shake off a bad dream. "I was angry. When she came out of the shower, I showed her the phone. She tried to deny it at first. Then she said it was true and that she never loved me. Said I was just useful. He went quiet again. After that, it's all a blur. Clark tried to dig deeper, but Jamal's story fell apart from there. He either didn't remember or didn't want to. Eventually, Clark gave the order to have him officially arrested and taken to the station. Back at the suite, Clark shifted focus. He began tracing the couple's past, how they met, who they knew, what led to this. The hotel's wedding coordinator gave him a guest list and contact details. From staff interviews, Clark learned the couple had booked the top-floor suite for 3 nights. They were supposed to fly to the Bahamas for their honeymoon afterward. Tyra's phone was sent to the lab. Clark hoped the tech team could retrieve the deleted messages, the ones Jamal claimed pushed him over the edge. By midday, Tyra's mother, Keisha Johnson, arrived. Her face was swollen from crying, but her expression was filled with something more than grief, something harder. "I knew this wasn't going to end well," she said when Clark sat her down in a quiet corner. "Not like this, but I had a feeling." "What made you feel that way?" Clark asked carefully. "My daughter was difficult, brilliant, but always had her own way of doing things. She was driven, ambitious, cold sometimes." "You didn't like Jamal?" Keisha let out a bitter laugh. "He was never what she wanted. He was just a step up. Money, connections, the life she wanted. Tyra didn't love him. I'm sure of it." "Did you ever tell her that?" "Plenty of times, but Tyra never listened to anyone. Not since her dad passed. She was 14 then. Something changed in her. She stopped caring about family. All she talked about was success, money, power. She used to say she'd never end up like me. A nurse working 2 jobs just to get by." Keisha paused, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "You know what really hurts?" she whispered. "I'm not surprised she cheated. She played games. But I never thought Jamal had this in him." Clark leaned in. "What can you tell me about Jamal? Anything off about him?" "He was polite, quiet, came from a good background. Loved Tyra, or so it seemed. He met her at college. He gave a talk on finance or something. She liked men with success." "Did you ever see them fight?" "Not seriously, just the usual stuff. Tyra knew how to be sweet when she needed something." Clark shifted gears. "Do you know any of Tyra's friends, or Andre's?" Keisha's eyes narrowed. "Andre Wilson. He was Jamal's best friend. I remember him from the wedding. Did anything seem off between him and Tyra?" Keisha hesitated. "Now that you mention it, they barely spoke at the wedding, which was strange, right? I mean, if they were close." She looked away for a moment, then added, "I did see them together once, months ago, at a coffee shop, across town. Cracks in the facade." "She didn't see me," Keisha said quietly. "They were sitting close. Too close to be just friends." "Did you ever mention it to Jamal?" Clark asked. Keisha shook her head slowly. "Number I tried to talk to Tyra instead. She brushed it off, said they were planning a surprise for Jamal's wedding day." Her voice wavered. "But I didn't buy it. Tyra could be so convincing." Tears welled up in her eyes again, and this time they fell freely. She buried her face in her hands. "I should have pushed harder, told Jamal the truth. Maybe then he would have ended it before it was too late. Maybe Tyra would still be alive." Clark gave her a moment, then asked gently, "You mentioned earlier that Tyra changed after her father passed. Can you tell me more about that?" Keisha nodded, voice quieter now. "It was cancer, the aggressive kind. 4 months from diagnosis to the end. Tyra was devastated. She was a daddy's girl. They were very close. After he died, something in her shut down. She stopped trusting people, started chasing success like it was the only thing that mattered." "She blamed your financial situation?" "She did," Keisha whispered. "She said if we'd had more money, better doctors, he might have lived. She never said it straight out, but I could feel it in how she looked at me. So yeah, Jamal, he was part of her plan. Security, a life she didn't want to build from scratch." Clark nodded slowly, processing every word. As he left the hotel, his mind swirled with questions. Back at the station at the precinct, Clark reviewed the early forensic reports. The preliminary cause of death was brutal, repeated blunt force trauma to the head. A shattered statue found near the bed had traces of blood and hair. It was likely the murder weapon. Then came a breakthrough. The tech team had unlocked Tyra's phone. Among hundreds of mundane texts and emails, one thread stood out. Messages between Tyra and someone saved as A. Wilson. "Tomorrow everything changes. Just a little more and we're free. He doesn't suspect a thing. I'll make sure it goes smoothly. We'll be together soon, I promise." Clark sat back, eyes narrowed. It was becoming clear. Tyra had been playing Jamal. But how deep did the betrayal go? Was it just an affair? Or was something else at play? And where the hell was Andre Wilson? Digging deeper, the next morning Clark returned to work with strong coffee and a notebook already filling with scribbles. He laid out the facts methodically, building personality profiles. Tyra Johnson, 21st business student, Bright, well-liked, active in her university community and several volunteer organizations. On the surface, a young woman with everything ahead of her. Jamal Parker, 30, financial consultant, prestigious education, a respected name in Madison's black business circle, and a polished public image. To outsiders, they seemed like a dream match. But Clark had been around long enough to know that dream couples often hid the darkest truths. A knock at his door pulled him from his thoughts. Detective Alicia Brooks stepped in, holding a folder. "I pulled Jamal's financials like you asked," she said. Clark took the file. "Anything stand out?" "Oh yeah," Alicia replied. "Your successful consultant is drowning, maxed out cards, late mortgage, and the IRS is sniffing around. Looks like he's been burning through savings fast. Withdrawals, weird transfers, stock sell-offs." Clark frowned. "Desperate to keep up appearances?" "Looks like it. Big house, fancy car, a yacht membership. And the wedding? 60 grand. Clark's eyes narrowed. "Why spend that kind of money when you're sinking?" "Maybe to maintain his image," Alicia offered. "Or maybe he expected a payday after the wedding." Clark looked up. "There was no mention of a trust fund or family money when I spoke with Tyra's mom. She said they live modestly." "Still," he said, tapping the file, "check if Tyra had any hidden accounts, assets, or life insurance we don't know about. And I want to speak with Keisha Johnson again." Next stop, Jamal's office. Before visiting Tyra's mother again, Clark headed downtown to Jamal's workplace, a sleek glass building full of financial firms, startups, and law offices. He stepped into the marble-floored lobby, nodded to the receptionist, and scanned the list of tenants. Parker's Strategic Consulting was on the third floor, chapter, Cracks in the Facade. Parker Financial Consulting sat quietly on the 14th floor of a glass and steel tower in downtown Madison. The office was modest, neat, with an air of tension that Clark could feel the moment he stepped off the elevator. The receptionist, a young woman with tired eyes and a stiff smile, looked up and instantly spotted his badge. "Are you here about Mr. Parker?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is it true that he's been arrested for his wife's murder?" "I'm investigating the circumstances of Mrs. Parker's death," Clark replied carefully, sidestepping her question. "How long have you worked with Mr. Parker?" 3 years, she said, "since the firm opened." "Have you noticed any changes in his behavior lately? Stress, anger, anything unusual?" Her name tag read Michelle. She hesitated, brushing back a few loose strands of hair. "He's been on edge for months," she finally said, "locking himself in his office more. Always on the phone, speaking in hushed tones. And there were some unpleasant visits from clients." "What kind of unpleasant?" Michelle lowered her voice. "A few came in really angry, yelling about lost money, broken promises. Mr. Parker would rush them into his office before I could hear much more." Clark asked to look around Jamal's office. Michelle nodded, giving her permission. At first glance, it was what you'd expect. Clean desk, diplomas on the wall, photos with smiling clients. A silver-framed picture of Tyra sat on the corner of the desk. She was smiling, but as Clark studied it more closely, he noticed something unsettling. The smile didn't reach her eyes. He opened a few drawers, pens, folders, post-it notes. But in one drawer, he found something interesting. A stack of envelopes marked with the Potawatomi Casino logo. Inside were receipts showing frequent trips to the Milwaukee casino. The dates stretched back nearly a year. The dollar amounts were large and growing. "So," he gambled, Clark muttered, snapping a photo with his phone. Another piece of the puzzle. Before leaving, Clark's eyes landed on a photo album tucked into a shelf. Following a hunch, he pulled it down and flipped through it. It was full of photos from Jamal's college days. One face kept appearing alongside his. Another young man, arms draped over each other's shoulders, both laughing in fraternity shirts. Clark flipped to the back of one photo. "Jamal and Andre, forever brothers." He took a photo of that too. Andre Wilson just became even more interesting. From Jamal's office, Clark drove to the apartment of Keisha Johnson, Tyra's mother. She lived in an older, worn-down complex on the city's east side. She looked more tired than the day before, but welcomed Clark in and offered him coffee. I just had a few follow-up questions, he said, accepting the mug she handed him. Did Tyra ever mention having any inheritance or insurance policies? Keisha frowned. An inheritance? Number when my husband died, there was a small policy, but it barely covered Tyra's college fees. What about investments? Any unexpected sources of income? No, she said slowly. Just scholarships and part-time work. Then she paused, eyes narrowing in thought. Wait, actually about 6 months ago, Tyra started saying she was receiving a decent dividend from an investment. I asked her about it, but she brushed me off, said it was boring, technical stuff. I assumed Jamal helped her set it up. Did she ever say how much it was? She told me once that she was about to become a very wealthy woman. I figured she meant after marrying Jamal. Clark jotted this down. The money trail was growing more tangled by the minute. He moved on. Mrs. Johnson, yesterday you mentioned seeing Tyra with Andre Wilson. Can you tell me more about their relationship? Keisha looked thoughtful. They met through Jamal. Andre would sometimes come by when Jamal brought Tyra around. They seemed friendly, nothing more. She hesitated. Then I saw them at a cafe once. They were sitting too close. Not like just friends. And since then? At the wedding, they barely spoke. That seemed strange to me. If they were having an affair, why the distance? Clark nodded for her to continue. And the day before the wedding, I overheard them talking in the garden. They thought no one could hear. They were arguing. What did they say? Andre said something like, "We shouldn't be doing this." And Tyra snapped back, "It's too late to back out." You didn't ask Tyra about it? I did. She told me they were planning a surprise for Jamal. I didn't believe her. But Tyra, she never told me everything. Clark left with more questions than answers. His next move was to speak with the wedding guests. He'd gotten a list from the wedding planner and started contacting those who might know something. The first was Letitia Brown, Tyra's high school friend. They met at a campus cafe. Letitia was nervous, twirling her cup nonstop. Tyra was always ambitious, she said. Even as a kid, she said she'd be rich and successful. After her dad died, it got intense. Do you think she really loved Jamal? Letitia looked down. I don't know. Tyra could be sincere when she wanted to be. But other times, she hesitated. Other times, Clark pressed gently. There were moments she'd get this look in her eyes, cold, calculating, like she wasn't planning a wedding, she was plotting something. And Andre Wilson, did you know if she had something going on with him? Letitia looked surprised. Andre? Jamal's best friend? No, I didn't think so, but she hesitated again. At the wedding, they danced together, just for a moment. I saw him kiss her neck. Quick. Then they pulled apart like they remembered people were watching. Clark's next stop was Marcus Johnson, Tyra's cousin. He described a strange moment at the wedding dinner. Andre gave the usual best man toast. It started out normal, but at one point he looked right at Tyra and said, I hope you get everything you deserve. It didn't sound like a compliment. How did Jamal react? He noticed. He stared at Andre, then at Tyra. You could feel the tension. What happened after that? Tyra raised her glass and moved the attention back to herself. She was good at that. Afterward, Jamal and Andre hardly spoke. They'd been best friends for years. Clark spoke to more guests, and the pattern repeated. Strange energy between Jamal and Andre. Jamal watching Tyra too closely. Andre always nearby, but never quite comfortable. By the time Clark returned to the station, a portrait was forming, not just of a murder, but of a love triangle wrapped in lies, money, and betrayal. And at the center of it all, 3 people who knew how to wear masks better than anyone else. Now it was time to tear those masks off. Chapter: Secrets on Fire. When Clark returned to his desk late that night, 2 new reports were waiting, one from forensics about Tyra's phone, and another from the team who had processed her apartment. He flipped through the photos first. Most showed ordinary things: textbooks, toiletries, piles of unopened mail. But one image made him pause. A small bag had been hidden deep inside a closet, almost deliberately tucked away. Inside it were several $1,000s in cash, a valid passport, and a one-way plane ticket to the Caribbean, booked in Tyra Johnson's name. The flight was scheduled for 1 week after the wedding, just one ticket. She was planning to run, Clark muttered. But not with Andre? Where's the second ticket? He didn't have long to wonder. Ray Simmons, the department's forensic tech, appeared in his doorway holding a stack of printed messages and data logs. "Clark," Ray said, "you need to see this." He laid out the papers across the desk. "These are the text messages between Tyra and Andre, the ones Jamal said he saw. But there's something off." Clark leaned in. "What do you mean?" "Metadata doesn't match. I cross-checked the timestamps with cell tower logs and server records. Some of these messages were supposedly sent when Tyra's phone was either off or completely out of range." Clark straightened. "You're saying they're fake?" Ray nodded. "It's very possible. There are apps that can create convincing fake texts. At first glance, they look real. But if you dig deep enough..." Clark rubbed his jaw, thinking. "Ray, I want you to go through all Tyra's communications with Andre from the last 6 months. Texts, emails, calls, everything. And check if there's anyone else she's been unusually in touch with." "On it," Ray said, already moving. By evening, Clark had a full background report on Andre Wilson. He was 29, a high school math teacher, unmarried, no kids, shared an apartment with a neighbor. Modest income, no notable debts, no suspicious banking activity. His address was already on file. Before heading there, Clark decided to check in on Jamal Parker, now formally charged with first-degree murder. Jamal looked older, worn out. Sitting in his holding cell, he stared blankly ahead until Clark sat down across from him. "I've got some new questions," Clark began. Jamal sighed. "I already told you everything I know." "Maybe, but did you ever notice anything strange between Tyra and Andre?" Jamal's eyes twitched slightly at the mention of his best friend. "Maybe," he said. "Sometimes, the way they looked at each other. But I figured I was just being paranoid." "Why paranoid?" Jamal hesitated. "Things haven't been right. Not for a while." "Financial problems?" Clark asked bluntly. Jamal looked up, dark circles under his eyes. "You know already, don't you? I know about the debt, the casino trips, the money you lost." Jamal slumped back. "It started with one bad investment. Lost some major clients' money. Tried to win it back at the casino. It just spiraled." "Did Tyra know?" "Number I didn't want her to. I thought if she found out, she'd leave me." "And those texts on her phone, are you sure they were real?" Jamal blinked. "What are you saying?" "Our expert thinks they might have been planted, fabricated, maybe even set up for you to find." "But why would someone do that?" Jamal asked, sounding genuinely confused. "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Clark replied. "One last thing. Did Tyra have any money, savings, stocks, anything she could have hidden from you?" "No," Jamal said after a moment. "She came from nothing. I covered most of our expenses. Though, lately she talked a lot about investments. I thought she was just curious about my work." As Clark walked out of the jail, his thoughts were a storm of contradictions. If the messages were fake, who planted them? And why? If Tyra was planning to leave, why alone? And where was the money coming from? Andre Wilson might hold the answers. Andre's apartment was in a quiet, middle-class building. Clark climbed to the 3rd floor and rang the bell. No answer. He rang again, then paused and listened. Silence. From the unit next door, an elderly woman peeked out with curiosity. "If you're looking for Andre, he's not home," she said. "He left this morning with a big suitcase." Clark flashed his badge. "Detective Clark, do you have any idea where he might have gone?" She shook her head. "No, but he looked rattled. Didn't even say hello, and he's usually very polite." "Have you noticed anything unusual lately? Anyone visiting often?" The woman brightened. "He's been seeing this young woman a lot. Pretty girl with long braids. They had long talks. Sometimes they argued. I overheard them once while taking out the trash." "What did they argue about?" "I couldn't hear everything, but once she said, 'He can never know.' And another time, Andre said, 'It's too risky.'" Clark thanked her and got the building manager's number. After a quick call and some explaining, the manager agreed to let him in. Inside, the apartment was a mess. Not the kind from laziness, but the frantic kind left behind by someone packing in a panic. Cabinets stood open. Drawers were half emptied. Clothes scattered on the floor. Clark spotted the trash can and bent down. Inside were half-burned documents. He pulled out the top ones carefully. Even through the scorch marks, he could see the logo of a major bank and part of Tyra's name. Then on the desk, he found Andre's school planner, still open. Whatever was going on, Andre had left fast, and he might be running from more than just the police. Chapter Hidden Truths. Clark thumbed through Andre's school planner, flipping past lesson notes and reminders, until one entry stopped him cold. On the day of the wedding, written in thick pen, "Last chance to stop this." Clark stared at the words, tension rising in his chest. Was Andre trying to stop the wedding, or something else? He searched the rest of the apartment, but there were no signs of where Andre might have gone, or anything that directly tied him to Tyra's death. Still, something didn't sit right. Then on the nightstand, Clark noticed a framed photograph. It showed Andre and Tyra standing close together, both smiling. His hand rested gently on her shoulder. From the leafy background and campus buildings, it looked like it was taken at a university. The intimacy in their expressions didn't lie. This wasn't just a friendship. Clark snapped a photo of the frame and added it to his growing collection of evidence. Each new piece raised more troubling questions. If Andre and Tyra were involved in some kind of scheme, what had gone wrong? Why didn't Andre go to the police after her death? And what if Jamal's supposed motive wasn't as clear-cut as it seemed? Back at the station, Clark didn't hesitate. He filed an official warrant and placed Andre Wilson on the wanted list. There were too many unanswered questions. This man clearly knew more about what happened on that wedding night than anyone else. It had been 3 days since Tyra was killed. 3 exhausting days. Clark had barely slept, spending every hour chasing leads, questioning witnesses, sifting through records. And yet the answers always seemed just out of reach. His office was now a storm of papers and evidence bags. Photos of Tyra, Jamal, and Andre were tacked across the board on the wall, connected by red thread and handwritten notes. Testimonies and transcripts were taped along the edges. Still, the center of it all, the truth, remained elusive. Then the phone rang. Clark snatched it up. "Detective Clark," he said. "Ray here," the text said on the other end. "I think I found what you're looking for." 15 minutes later, Clark was in the tech lab, staring at Ray's monitor. "I managed to recover the deleted files from Tyra's phone," Ray explained, tapping a pencil against the desk. "There was a hidden encrypted folder, locked away in a secure vault app. Took some work, but we cracked it." Images began popping up on the screen. Dozens of them. Tyra and Andre. On a beach, at a quiet restaurant, laughing in a hotel room, kissing in a dimly lit corner. Some were innocent, others far more intimate. "They weren't just having an affair," Clark muttered. "They were in love." Ray nodded. "According to the metadata, the earliest photo goes back about a year. But take a look at this." He pulled up the last image in the folder. It was taken the day before Tyra died. The screen showed Tyra and Andre in what looked like a rented apartment. She was in casual clothes, curled up next to him, her eyes closed peacefully as he kissed her forehead. The timestamp was undeniable. "She spent the night before her wedding with him," Clark whispered. Everything Jamal had believed about his wife, his friend, their betrayal, might not just have been true. It might have been worse. But then again, not all betrayal was as it seemed, because someone had gone through great lengths to erase this evidence. Someone had faked messages. Someone had set Jamal up. And someone had made sure Tyra never got on that plane. Clark stared at the last photo on the screen, his mind racing faster than ever. This wasn't just about love or jealousy. This was about money, fear, and someone playing a very dangerous game. Closing remark and vote of thanks. Thank you for joining us on this gripping journey through love, betrayal, and the pursuit of truth. Detective Malcolm Clark's investigation into the death of Tyra Parker has taken us into the tangled depths of relationships, hidden motives, and moral gray areas, reminding us that the truth is rarely simple Injustice is often layered with painful revelations. To every reader who stayed with this story until the end, your time, curiosity, and imagination are deeply appreciated. We hope you found this experience not only engaging, but thought-provoking. Educational purpose. This story has been written and shared purely for educational and creative learning purposes. It aims to explore narrative structure, character development, and storytelling techniques that may help writers, students, and enthusiasts develop a deeper understanding of dramatic fiction, crime investigation writing, and emotional pacing. Disclaimer: all characters, events, and institutions depicted in this story are entirely fictional. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or real-life situations is purely coincidental and unintentional. This work is a product of creative fiction and should not be interpreted as fact or a reflection of real-world individuals or cases.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more